Pat will be doing a meditation on the Lord's Prayer. And so I will take this moment to introduce Pat Greenwood. Pat has discovered unity, what was it, 200 years ago or 20? I know that there's a zero in there somewhere that 20 years. She discovered unity 20 years ago, and she said, I found my home. She served on the board several times and is on the board now, and values connection. She's also did a lot of work with our youth, and she loves children, and I would have to say she is a child that is trapped in an adult body, but can't wait to get out most of the time. She shared something very personal to me today. She shared that she was a nurse, and for her career, she took care of people. And yet at the end of her career, she awakened to a new idea, that it's not about taking care of people, but empowering people. And so she is here today to empower us, you and me.
So today we're celebrating Father's Day, and I began thinking about Jesus was always talking about I and the Father are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And when his disciples were asking, how do we speak with God? How do we talk with God? He helped them to imagine speaking to God as a father. So I'd like to do a meditation today on the Lord's Prayer. And we'll do it, I'd like to share with you some of the Aramaic words. The Aramaic words is the language of Jesus. And we'll translate from the Aramaic language directly into English, although we're used to the translation of Jesus' words from Aramaic to Greek and then to English. So the words will be a little different, but I found a deeper meaning when I heard those words. So let us just take some time now to close our eyes, if you're comfortable doing that, and let's go within. Breathing in slowly, bringing in the Spirit of God, feeling at one with God, feeling peace. And let's use our imagination. Let's imagine that we are moving backwards in time. With each breath, we're going to move back a little further and a little further, back to a time when Jesus was on earth, and maybe he was by the Sea of Galilee. And just imagine yourself there. It's early in the morning. You can feel your head on the pillow. You're just waking up. You become conscious of the fact that you're in a room. There's just a bit of daylight coming through, but you hear sounds on the street. It's like footsteps. There's people outside. You get out of the bed and you open your door and you look at the streets. They're dusty streets, but you see figures. They're walking down the street. They seem to be going somewhere. And then you see other figures moving along in the street. You decide you'll follow them. You're wondering, where are they going? And as you follow them and you move through the dusty streets, you notice other people are coming from other side streets. Soon you're outside of the town, and now you're on a path and you can see the sea next to you. And in that very pale light, you can see the fishermen's ships just getting ready to come into shore. And you're going up a little hill. And you're following the group as you go up the hill, and as you look up, there's other people there too. There seems to be groups of people sitting here, sitting there. You hear some murmuring and some talking in this very quiet time. And as you move along the path, you find a spot where you'd like to stop. You notice a small group of people sitting quietly, talking, and so you sit down next to them. And you try to listen to what they're saying. So you move a little bit closer to hear what they're saying. And then you realize they're speaking a different language, a language that you don't really understand. But somehow you just seem to want to be with them. And you're asking in your mind, why are they here? What's going on? Suddenly, the light shines off the sea, and sunrise occurs. And there's silence. Everybody stops talking. Everybody is looking further up the hill. Everybody's looking to a point on the hill where there's an opening, like a cave, and a figure steps out. And this person steps out, and they start walking down the path. They stop and talk to some people here. He moves along, and he stops to some people there. And you think to yourself, who is this? Who is this person? And then suddenly there's like a being next to you that reads your thoughts and knows what you're thinking and says, that's Yeshua. You probably know him as Jesus. He comes here every morning to pray. And when he comes out, he teaches us all about God. And so as you watch him move down further the path, he comes over and he sits right next to the group that you're in. They seem to be asking him a question. And he starts to answer them. And as he does, you hear the words, but you don't understand the words. But somewhere in your heart, you think you hear what he's saying. Our one absolute eternal being, to which we are born forth from the realm of all and the only. I am empty with the awe of your presence and the purity of your name. Empower my creative beingness through your expansion from your ever-present realm. As I realize the strength and virtue as one, as the manifest earth, as in an unmanifest realm. Provide my nourishment and shine your insight and understanding through me now and in every present moment. Release my hidden past as I cancel my past concerns with others. Do not let me lose my true self in forgetfulness, but wholly release me from the errors of my perception. For thy realm is the absolute, the all and the only, in our strength and virtue and magnificence. From cosmic gathering to cosmic gathering, from age to age. May these be the rooted earth center from which all of my actions flow. You decide to go back down the hillside, thinking about the words that you've heard. You go past the sea. The boats have docked now. The fishermen have unloaded their catch. You go back into the town, back into the streets, and you go back into your home. And as you open the door, you realize you are here now in the present. This day, this time, it's Sunday morning. You're here at church, you're here in the building that you're in, but you still can remember all of the words that you've heard. And what you remember most is, from this rooted center, all of my actions flow. So today we're talking about imagination. So how do we use imagination in our spiritual practice? Well, of course, I have to use the God bag, because there's always something in this bag that tells us about God. And some things are really too big to fit. So an elephant, the idea of an elephant helped me represent the idea of imagination. There's something about elements elephants that are really very special. They seem to be majestic animals. I think traditionally they were ridden by royalty. They are huge, they're hugely large, and yet they're very graceful. If you've ever seen several elephants walking around with the little calves underneath, they don't step on them, they don't get kicked. You wonder how they could do that. They're very powerful, and yet they are lovingly loyal to each other. They are very connected as animals, as families. So I think they seem to capture a certain amount of awe when I think of an elephant. And of course, the story that comes to mind about elephants is, and I think we've all heard it, the 5 blind men and the elephant. And even though we've heard it, I'll just get us all on the same page. 5 blind men are walking down the road, and it's getting late and they need a place to stay. So they see this man and they say, is there some place where I could stay for the night? And he says, sure, you know, I have an elephant hut over here, you can come and stay with them. And so they're very grateful and they're thinking, what's an elephant? Because they've never seen one before. Right? They've never experienced one before. So they all go into the elephant hut and they all kind of take a place to experience what's an elephant. And of course, one man is standing by the hind leg and he reaches and says, oh, an elephant is like a tree. And the other man, further around behind him, is, oh, he's feeling the tail. He says, an elephant is like a rope. Going further around, there's another man who feels this wave of something over his head. He feels the ear and he says, oh, an elephant is a fan. And then further around the front, there's this man who's feeling that, oh, an elephant is like a snake as he feels the trunk. And the guy next to him is feeling the husk, and he says, oh, an elephant is like a spear. So each of them have had their own perception of what an elephant is, which is kind of showing us the human level of imagination. We base it on what our human experience has been in the past, and we base it on where we are right now, what we see in front of us right now. And we see that as the whole thing. So somehow the elephants have probably kind of missed the bigger picture of what an elephant is. Frequently you hear this story talked about as like, okay, we're learning we have to accept other people's perceptions. People are different, people see things differently, and we have to accept that. That's okay. Nobody's wrong and nobody's right. You be you and I'll be me. And that's a nice little lesson from that. But I guess I see the parable a little bit differently. Let's imagine something else. Suppose the elephant owner comes out in the morning and says, I've been called away in an emergency, I'll be gone for several days. Could you stay here and take care of my elephant? And of course, this is the part and if you're watching a TV program where it says to be continued next week. So imagine what's going on as these 5 men are now in charge of taking care of the elephant. So what I'm picturing is all they're stuck with is their human imagination, and so they've got to work this out. You know, how do we take care of this thing that all of us are seeing differently and all of us are experiencing differently? So, can you hear the arguments going on? He is so stupid, you know, he is so dense, you know, he's delusional. Nobody understands what I'm trying to tell them. So they all have their own perception. So trying to communicate, so okay, the next step is we got to do things differently. We have to cooperate. So let's try communication. So the man next to the tree, the leg, starts talking to the man with the rope, and they change places. Okay, I have to see things your way. And the tree man gets a hold of the rope and he says, oh, that's not a rope. It's a branch to my tree. And then the man who is now by the leg, he said, oh, I see. This is the other end of my rope, and you've wrapped it around this core here. So you kind of see it's all about, I use my imagination to convince other people that I'm right. I need people to see my point of view. Kind of, we'll call this the lower level of using the imagination. Okay, they still have a problem to solve. They're supposed to be taking care of this elephant. I'm seeing the man by the ear who's suddenly saying, "What happened? The fan's not working. What happened to the rope? Oh, it's the guy with the spear. He cut the rope, didn't he?" And now we're into blame. There's a problem here. Who am I going to blame for it's not working? We're using this imagination to figure out how we're going to solve a problem when we really don't see the whole picture. I guess one more. I like to imagine things. One more scenario is the guy in the front is saying, "Will you guys just calm down? This snake is going crazy. He's flipping and flopping all over the place. He can't take all this noise and all this dissension. Now just let's everybody be nice. Let's everybody just get along." At which point, nobody sees the elephant in the room. Nobody is aware of what is here that's bigger and more majestic and more important. So about this time, maybe they hear this huge trumpet blast, which, shakes the walls and makes your ears ring for a while. And suddenly they're aware of, oh, there's more going on here than we've seen. There's more than we've experienced so far. Probably the elephant is saying, "I'm hungry and I'd like some food and I need a drink." And so they now become aware of this human, or a living being that's there that is in their presence. And so now they can focus on, I guess I would call it having a higher consciousness. Let's get above what's going on and see there's a lot more here to be seen. So I look at this little parable as, in my life, how often do I try to envision something in the future, but I always base it on what happened to me in the past. It'll be the same thing, same scenario. And I think that's learning to go to a higher consciousness. What does God have in store for us? What's that inner vision? And this is what the imagination is talking about. It's the vision of what God has. It's Christ consciousness. And I think as I further thought about this, I couldn't help but think of our church. Here we are, kind of a group of blind men. Like, what do we do with what we've got? What do we do with this? And learning how do we communicate with each other? What's really going on? What's the bigger picture here? Why are we here in the presence of something that's much bigger than we are? And what do we do with it? And I think this is what we're doing. I think we are seeking a higher consciousness about where this church is going, where our personal lives are going and where our church is going. And so far, we're just taking it step by step. We're learning to communicate. We're learning to be in vision, and most of all, to be ready for whatever happens. So I guess I would be interested in other people's perception of that parable.
The service is open for discussion, feedback, or questions. So the mic is open. And do you mind if I go first? Being a part of this church and working with people that are part of this church, we all have different perceptions, and those perceptions come from our past, come from our upbringing, come from society norms, come from our conditioning. And it reminds me a little bit of the Course in Miracles, that what you think and what you imagine is what you see outside. So, each one of those people in that story, from my standpoint, the tree, because the man was familiar more with trees than anything else. And the spear, he was familiar with spears. And so we kind of bring that into the mix. And then there's different perceptions. So how do we resolve conflict? And there is such a beautiful opening, and part of that opening is to see the whole, try to set an intention to see the whole elephant. And to see the whole, we need to leave our heads and go into our hearts, go into our feelings, and I believe that those feelings point to something. Those feelings point to the whole of all of us. And I remember you once said, if you imagine a whole mirror being broken into little pieces, those shards of glass, to me, those little pieces can have words that symbolize parts of the whole of the elephant. And those parts would be, if you were to take heaven and break it up into pieces, one of those pieces would be matter, that you matter, because in heaven you matter, and it's so important that we matter here as people. In heaven you belong, so it's so important that we belong here as a community. Total transparency in heaven, so it's so important that we be totally transparent with our feelings, with what's going on with us, and that we are acknowledged and honored, even though that reality might be different than others. So to me, this is the idea of a community where we're looking at parts that are part of the whole, and that we can somehow see both. So, thank you. The mic is open.
Well, I guess I have the mic, so I'll go next. Your talk reminded me of the man who wrote the Four Agreements, and I think number 3 was don't make assumptions. And I was thinking for your story, the men were blind, but I think this is symbolic how all of us, when we make assumptions, in a sense, we are blind, mentally blind. So when we make assumptions about something or things, we only see the little facet that we're most familiar with, like the blind men in the story. And that's why I think the Toltec fella brought making assumptions to bring us to our consciousness. So we can try and be fully aware of when we see something new or even something we've experienced every day to say, well, is there something I don't know about this that I don't know that I don't know about it? So that's my comment.
I looked up the definition for imagine, and it says forming new ideas, images, or concepts of external objects not present. And I was thinking, I think we all are creating, but in order to create, we have to imagine. I think they come together. And I'm wondering if we don't use it, we keep imagining the same thing. So if you're in a negative space and it overwhelms someone, they can't imagine it they have to work harder at creating a new vision. And it's kind of like I was thinking of when someone creates, be it an architect or an engineer or whatever, on the draft board, they're imagining, they're drawing. You make adjustments. And I think if we are able to allow ourselves to go crazy and not be afraid to imagine anything, that's when we have true connection, because nothing is limiting us. So if you think, let's say you're in debt and you can't imagine getting out of debt, everything is so weighing you down. So it's kind of like have a writer's block, so to speak. An author, they talk about that all the time. They just can't have movement there. And I'm wondering, you're creating, whether you know it or not. Okay, not you. I am creating, whether I know it or not. But if I'm not happy with what I'm creating, that means I'm not allowing myself to just go crazy. And for example, imagine me winning $20 trillion. It's a matter of taking a risk sometimes. And sometimes, if we're lucky enough, it just comes natural to us. But it scares us and we stifle it. oh no, that's way out there. Get a grip. But it's a lot to think about. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. That's it.
I had a recurring thought this week that somewhat ties in with our topic, and it is on the interconnectedness of experiences. And yesterday I went to a large music event at Royal Scott, and to think of the dozens and hundreds of people that put that event on, where they had 7 or 9 different bands playing from noon to 11, and there was a food truck there and ice cream vendors, and how many people contributed to that event to make it such a positive experience for hundreds of people. And even when I go through the lunch line at the cafeteria, I think about the people that bring the food into the facility and the people that prepare the food, and the people that answer the telephone. And I've just been paying attention to the interconnectedness of our daily experiences involving so many people that we don't even stop to think about it. The people that built the car that I drive, the gas that goes into the car, the food that we eat. So sometimes experiences are difficult, but sometimes they're smooth. And when they are smooth, to think about how many people contributed to make that possible. I've had that thought this week.
Pat, I was also thinking that in your story, you did not concentrate on the other side. How did the elephant think about these people making assumptions about the elephant? And when we interact in life, when we only see part of something, part of a person, what goes on in that other person when they're seeing us seeing only one little facet of them, and we're totally missing the point? So I wonder what effects there could be to extend your talk a little on the other side.
I just pictured the elephant as God, patiently waiting for them to get the point. That's what the trumpet sound was.
Based on what you had just said, that, that elephant is God, and in some way that elephant is parts of us too, kind of along the lines what Dan said. Yeah, we to be seen loving, to be seen for who we are, instead of what someone wants, or as a tool, or as a means to get their ends. So there's something touching for me about seeing more deeply. Thanks.
This is David. Thank you, Pat. That was wonderful. I'm hoping as well that the newer translation of the Lord's Prayer, if you could either say it again and or have it on the Zoom or on the video at the end. But in speaking to the 5 blind men, each of them got it wrong. They were able to acknowledge that, wait, maybe my initial action or reaction, my imagination of what, all the, my experiences or whatnot, is still not correctly identifying that which is, and they were able to learn from their mistakes. They were willing to dare to make the creative assumption, but then realize as well, oh wait, no, this is not the whole picture, and that there is still some more that I can learn from this. So,
Lord's Prayer to the peace song. And for the prayer of protection, just to give you a heads up, at the last line, when I say, wherever we are, God is, we will respond by saying, wherever God is, we are. So there's a little change at that end. So that was introduced by, we're experimenting with that, which was introduced by a member of the board. And let the board members know how this fits with you. The light of God surrounds us all together. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us all together. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is. Wherever God is, we are. And that's the truth. And in closing, Dave will share his closing performance, and I'm hoping that one of these days, when we put the camera on him, he will dance while playing the cello. Is that possible? No? He's smiling. He'll be thinking about it. And then after that, feel free, the mics will be open so the Zoomers can talk to the in-persons and the in-persons can talk to the Zoomers, and everyone can talk to each other. So thank you for joining us today.